Low attacks can't hurt me. This is something that Universus players have been saying for as long as I have been playing, and it has always bugged me because when I joined the game in March of 2022, a good old 4 years ago at this point, jeez, we were in a meta where 1.3 million volts, a low attack, tongue whip, a low attack, were dominating with this explosive damage from setup. There was also other things rolling around the meta like All Might 3, but lows have kind of always been a consistent threat and not something that I have shown disrespect to. In fact, I have utilized lows myself as part of my game plan. And even in this day and age, where we have Devil Jin using cameo counters, turning things into lows, utilizing those low abilities, and we've just got a brand new reign of Kaiju Godzilla attack, which gets +1 damage for each of your opponent's foundations on a 4 diff low. And the immediate response from some people in the community was, they don't have the low block, or lows don't matter, lows can't hurt me. And it is a mantra, it is something ingrained into our community. And being such a small card game, we don't have a lot of D. I thought I would step away from my theories and my crackpot stuff to actually do journalism. Look into this phrase, look at why people say this, look at where the phrase has come from, its history, if it still stands up today, and where it's kind of come. So I messaged a few people, including the company, around low attacks, low blocks, and then honestly, people were surprisingly more willing to go deep with this as much as possible. Jeremy Ray and Kevin Broberg went deeper than I can imagine. I did invite Kevin Broberg on to talk to me about this because I am not going to be able to repeat everything he said because this man, he should do his own video on this. It'd be much more clear, much more concise, and definitely much more streamlined than what I'm going to do here. But I digress, I'll get into it. So I reached out to some old heads, to some of the people that were playing before me. And this phrase, or this nature of low attacks don't matter, they can't hurt me, seems to go back to the Jasco era, around the Red Horizon time when Jasco took over the company. And it's really interesting to see because it's something that players adapt. You will see that some of the top decks that go on out there, Kevin Brogue's hands list at One World was running less low blocks than any other one and ran into a very powerful Krista deck that was running lots of lows. Let's break this down. Lows in the UVS era. The power and disruption of low attacks is the same as high and mids. It's just, from what I gather from Jeremy Ray, it's a design feature. When adapting an IP, when adapting what comes into our game, it is easier to adapt. It is easier to have high impact, mid and high attacks because that's where the majority of the finishing moves, the powerful moves from anime, from fighting games, from comics, everything is the attacks that get flashily countered, the attacks that get dealt with are all coming from eye lines. So low attacks are more disruptive, they're more underhanded. It's why when we see things like Earthbreaker, they're lows because they're coming from the earth. With 1.3 million volts is an attack that moves along the earth. So these are low attacks because not mechanically or from a design point of view, but from an IP point of view, which is very cool. Again, in terms of block mod, in terms of breaker, in terms of what we get to counteract, if we look at things like the drive attacks in our opponent's turn, they're all high. This is because when you're adapting an IP, it's easier to reverse, block, interact with an attack that's coming from above or from across. A low is hard to redirect, it's hard to block. Makes perfect sense from a design point of view. But in a gameplay point of view, it becomes a bit skewed. But it actually doesn't impact it. It's more the player's perception. So, I took some notes. In 2025, we had 132 mid attacks, 97 high attacks, and 82 low attacks. Not that big of a difference, in all honesty. In terms of block modifiers, in terms of blocks, we had 307 mids, 178 highs, and 172 lows. Break that down even further. In terms of zero cost mid blocks, there was 15. In highs, there was 4, and in lows, there was 6. One difficulty block mods, we had 73, 51, and 50. Very close. In the mids always outscale them. In two diffs, it's 156, and then in three, on a block of 3, it's 67, and even a 4 block mod of 4. You're looking at 87 and 81 for two difficulty block mods in high and low, respectively, and then you have a 39 and 40 in the 3 block mods, with lows coming up higher. The big thing was when I looked at the breaker blocks. Lowe's had 6 breaker blocks reprinted in 2025. Mids had 15, highs only had 2, which is crazy to me. That we say that low blocks aren't impactful, that low blocks don't matter, but the majority of off-zone breaker blocks were low. If we take a deeper look, let's have a look at the zero block modifiers and actually take a look at what those were printed on. So the zero low block modifiers were all on attacks. There was 3 attacks that were 8 to 11 difficulty, so unlikely to be played en masse, which means we really only had 3, which were 5 to 4 different cards. Whereas if you look at high was on 4 to 6 difficulty attacks, one of which was the Rage Riot shift attack that builds into pump damage, which you generally don't want to block with, but it's still a well-statted block. It's really kind of crazy to think about, because even if you discount the 8 to 11 mids, lows had more breaker blocks by 1. If we look at the low attacks, 1.3 million volts and tongue whip are the ones that I kind of focus on. But if you look at the ones that were printed this year, pulling up the sheet again, Chivalrous Charge into Igris is a very powerful low attack. It is a low 3 for 7 damage. Flake, which led to a pseudo infinite combo that had to be patched. Knockdown Punch, which can do some serious damage on the end of a string. Pale Rider, Earthbreaker, Colossal Swat, Harness Undeath, kills people. And if you let it hit, it burns you because of all the backups that are currently being played. So this mentality of low attacks don't matter is a bit old hat. So where does this disrespect for lows actually come from? Well, according to our world champion, hopefully at the time this video goes out, I'm recording this in January, but my upload schedule was a bit hectic at the minute. I'm very ahead on content, if I'm honest. Kevin Berg kind of takes the acknowledgement that he played a part in lows getting the disrespect that they have. When I asked Kevin Browick, he told me there's a history, and this was backed up by Jeremy Ray, again, a very good and old head player who now designs cards for the game as well, that all lows, or lows and throws, have been legitimate strategies throughout the history of the game. And we've seen this with all low Nomu back in 2022. We've seen this with all lows kind of being tried to push. The big thing is there's big counters to those abilities, especially once someone figures out what you're doing. But speaking to Kevin Browick, he basically took the credit for the lows aren't real, lows can't hurt me. If apparently he drafted a Substack post. Honestly, I don't know what Substack is, and I was too scared to ask because he was on it with this. And like I said, he needs to make his own video on this because he has got such a wealth of knowledge here. But to him, your highs are your haymakers, your jabs, your big swings, like the flashy attacks that you see in anime, like the overhead swings, the attacks that are supposed to end the fight. Your mids are your body blows, they're the ones that do the setup, and your lows are your disruptive attacks. And that may have been true in the UFS days. I know that in Red Horizon there was a severe lack of low attacks as well as low blocks because adapting the IP kind of had an emphasis on mid and highs. Kevin also goes on in our conversation to talk about the fact that there's not too many meaningful attacks on their own. It's how they get set up with characters. So 1.3 million volts, isn't scary on its own. It needs set up with characters that utilize committal like Toga 3. The example that Kevin used was that when we look at the worlds from last year, the Krista deck that he faced had a low mentality and he still beat it. It was a very close game, but lows were his worst block zone. He had 19 compared to 29 mids and 26 highs, whereas Travis was running Walk the Dog, Wall Maria's Might, Heaven Piercing Ice Wall, these very cool low attacks that apply pressure. I mean, the Walk the Dog and the Wall Maria's Might were the crux of the deck, but still managed to walk away with. And but Kevin still managed to walk away with a win when lows were his weakness. Kevin puts it in as more lows are designed to be disruptive. Characters like Godzilla get to utilize them more because Godzilla adds additional damage, adds additional threat to a low, making this attack that you're like, I can half this or I can tank this into a I need to block this. I don't know how other people feel because to me, Blue Flame Torment is one that I kind of always want to block. It always gets bigger. There are lots of lows I personally don't want to hit me, but I always because I joined when I did and I was thrown into the end of low attacks kill you. I've always got some kind of respect on lows, but it makes sense from what I can gather from speaking with Jeremy, from speaking with Kevin, from speaking with other old heads like Mike Hardiman. It just seems to be a carryover. It seems to be this precedent, this convent that the players have made with themselves that low attacks don't matter. And regardless of where the game evolves or where the game goes to, it's this matcha of like what players adapt and new players come in. When you hit a certain level, you kind of get in on the joke, even if you know lows are impactful or that you should watch out for lows. It kind of becomes ingrained as you get deeper into the community that low attacks can't kill you. When they can, it's very weird, and it's why I wanted to look into it because when the new Ghidorah attack came in and was essentially a true 100% on damage, I said you can block it, and the immediate response was nobody plays low blocks, and I was like, why is that the immediate response? Not like, oh, I've got the Omni block, or I've got the other stuff. It's like, no, low blocks aren't impactful. We've got 6 breaker blocks this year, but that's a very obscure case. We haven't got low blocks that can force you to end your turn. The breakers aren't as big as what we see on other ones. Generally, we see a breaker one, breaker two, maybe a breaker three on occasion, but it's generally a breaker one, and it's usually on the higher ended statted breaker blocks. Whereas we have a breaker one on a one diff high block in Vile Seizing. We have Airy Smiles, which forces you to play a non-attack after you block with it. We have Showdown, which allows you to choose 2 of your opponent's foundations to commit. Blocking highs feels more impactful because you get to do more when you do it. Blocking mids, you're taking half damage. You're getting to do the interactions. There isn't as many micro interactions. There isn't as many choices to be made. Blocking lows, it's almost a more boring option, but it's still very cool. It's kind of one of those things that players need to learn around. That low blocks aren't flashy, aren't stylish, and aren't going to be clipped and put on YouTube as the look at this amazing low block I did compared to the I shut down my opponent's turn by showdown blocking and committing the 2 best foundations. That's going to be more powerful than going I blocked on a 3, haha, I get wrecked. The attacks are there, the blocks are there. All the stuff we need to kill this phrase and kill this mentality is there. But I don't think we should. We are a small game, and this is kind of a inside joke that only our community gets. Every community gets reading the card explains the card. As much as I hate that phrase, and I have another video on that phrase, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's one that everybody gets. Everybody loves to draw a card. Everybody loves 2 for 1s. Everybody loves value. It's something that every card game gets. But there's very little that we get that is ours and only ours, that only applies to our card game, that the community as a whole can kind of joke about and understand. And this is one of them. And I think it's very cool. I think it's just a very cool tradition, covenant, precedent, whatever you want to say it is. It's an inside joke, and we're all a part of it. And it's kind of one of those things that when you're a new player, there are certain milestones you'll reach. And being in on the joke of low attacks don't matter is one of them. I've kind of ranted on here, and this was only meant to be an 8-minute quick video out there, but it went so deep. And Kevin, if you're watching this, please make a better video on this. I don't have the depth of knowledge to go into the pre-UVS games era and talk about Red Horizon and the block modifiers and why lows didn't come around there, why it was adapted IPs. But it's something that the old heads and the people want to talk about. Kevin blew up my DMs for a while. I was expecting just to get a one-word answer. It turned into a full conversation. I asked Jeremy, like, is there a design difference between highs, lows, and mids? And he went, fundamentally, no. And mechanically, no. But from an IP perspective, yes. Low attacks are attacks that come from the ground. They're ones that come up. There are ones that are disruptive because of where they're coming from. And that's why they're harder to block, because they're not in eye line. A high attack you can see coming, but your eyes don't generally drift down unless you're looking. So low attacks are more impactful that way. Earthbreaker, 1.3 million volts. All these attacks come from below. They interact with the earth. They have this earth and kind of like low motif, which is where they come from. I hadn't really thought about adapting attack zones based on the IP rather than just balancing in card design. But this is really cool to see. Again, it adds a new layer to what the design team actually do when adapting the IP. It's not just slapping an ability on a card that could go on any other card. It's a tailor-made card for adapting an IP. The care and precision of making sure this moment from a game, from a comic, from a manga, from an anime is captured in this card and is translated as true as possible. So I don't know how to end this, because my conclusion here is low attacks do matter and low attacks will kill you. But don't stop saying that low attacks don't matter, and don't stop saying that low attacks won't kill you, because it's a cool inside joke. If you're coaching a new player, if you're talking to a new player, if you're trying to help people improve or helping with their deck list or in a serious setting, drop the joke. It's not worth it there. People want to get better at the game. But if you're having fun, if you're playing the card game, if you're on the Discord, go nuts. There's a time and a place for these jokes, and I think finding that balance of letting players know when it's a joke and letting players know when they should be aware of low attacks is a very cool thing. It is something we establish ourselves as players as we get bigger, as we get better at the game, knowing what zones to hold, knowing what characters do what, and how characters play decks. All lows and throws, all highs and throws, never a good idea. You can easily get countered, but it's very cool that we've got this inside joke. It's something that's been bugging me for a while. I just never really thought about making content on it, and I thought I would. It was cool doing the research into the numbers of low attacks and low mods that we got last year. It was very cool to get to chat to Kevin and Jeremy and other people about what lows actually mean to them and where this history came from. And from what I can tell, this phrase originated in Red Horizon. I think it's really cool. But yeah, show lows some respect, but then don't kill the joke. I'm going to leave it there. For theories, news, and more, win, lose, or draw, keep it UK versus.